Hi everybody, it's Dr. D and you're listening to Dr. D's 5-minute lecture series number 2. Today we're going to be talking about philosophy of religion from the Asian religion point of view. So, got my timer set and we're ready to go. Let's go. Alright, so if you watched my previous video, you'll recall that in the traditional study of the philosophy of religion, certain arguments and topics are quite common in repeating. For example, we have arguments about trying to prove God's existence and arguments against God's existence. And when we talk about God in this context, we're really talking about what's known as the God of the three O's, or what I like to call the God of the three O's. So a God that is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent, also a creator God. But when we turn to the Asian context, we see a very different set of issues and problems that arise. Now, the first thing that's important to realize is that Asia is not a unified whole. Right? Asia is the largest continent in the world, and there are many different sort of centers of culture and philosophy within Asia. But the two biggest and the two most important, I would say, especially if you're looking at classical philosophy, is China and India. And so these are the two real cradles of civilization. And so from out of India and China, you get two very different worldviews and two very different approaches to philosophy, to religion. Another important thing to realize is that in Asia, there was never really a sharp distinction between philosophy and religion. And this was true in the West too, until modern times. You could even say all the way up to the time of Descartes, when there was a real split away of philosophy from, let's say, theology, for example. So, if we look at India, for example, what we find there is, all the way back to at least 1,500 before Common Era, you have the beginnings of what we now call Hinduism, with the development of these sacred texts called the Vedas, which for many, many centuries were passed down orally in the sacred language of Sanskrit. And then also from India, around 500 BC, we have the beginning of Buddhism. And so, because of this, Hinduism, what we could call broadly Hinduism, and Buddhism share a number of very important characteristics, as well as other systems within India that we can consider both to be Hindu and non-Hindu. Now, some of these ideas, which are of crucial importance, are the idea of karma, which most people have heard of before, the idea of what comes around goes around, notion of reincarnation, that when we die we're not gone, but we come back again and again and again, and we have for countless times in the past, which isn't a good thing in Indian philosophy. It's actually a bad thing. So the problem becomes, how do we escape this never-ending cycle of birth and death, which is more or less determined by karma. So one way we could look at it is that in some ways karma is the engine that drives this process of reincarnation or rebirth. And this whole process in itself is called samsara, which is a sort of repeated cycle of birth and death. What we also find in the Indian context is there are some systems which are adamantly theistic. They believe in a god, some a creator god, some a particular kind of god, which is distinctive to that system. And then there are other systems which are completely atheistic. For example, Buddhism and classical Samkhya. Now, shifting gears very quickly, when we look to the East Asian side of things, we have a whole different set of problems and issues. And the two main traditions that come out of China are Confucianism and Taoism. And both Confucianism and Taoism can also be considered atheistic in the sense that neither system believes that there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving creator God that made this world. Rather, from Taoist point of view, ultimate reality is understood as the Tao, or the way of things, and in Confucianism, they have a concept of heaven as a moral force that's built into the very fabric of reality. And that's it. That's my time up. So, thanks for watching another episode of Dr. D's 5-minute lecture series, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.